Hey everyone, it's Kodie. This week we've got a two-parter for you that's mostly going to be updates from some topics that we've covered previously throughout our episodes. One thing I want to note, this episode was recorded on Saturday, August 23rd, and we talk a little bit about Kilmar Abrego Garcia in here and how he's been released. As of Monday night on August 25th, he has been re-detained, and the U.S. government is saying they're going to deport him either to Uganda or Costa Rica. So that's a little bit outdated, and just wanted to make sure that we called that out up front. All right, on to the show. Welcome to Propaganda Loves You, the show that asks and answers the question, if the Trump administration doesn't want to spend money on things that are divisive to Americans, why is he funding ICE? I'm Kodie, your host for this week, joined by Noah, Arthur, and Cheyenne.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
We shall fight on the beaches. We shall fight on the landing grounds.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
Welcome to Propaganda Loves You. We have quite a few different things to kind of talk about this week. A lot of it, I think, is just going to be updates on topics that we've talked about previously on the podcast, but with things changing as quickly as they are, we want to provide some updates on what's occurring right now in Washington, D.C. I think in our last core episode, we talked about the federal takeover of D.C. That's changed. The narrative around that's changed a bit. And so we want to talk about what the administration is saying they're doing and what they're saying they're going to do next, kind of foreshadowing that they'd like to do similar things in Chicago and New York City. And then we'll talk a little bit more about the Smithsonian and the administration's efforts to control the historical narrative of our country through, I guess, monitoring and directing what the Smithsonian can do. And then we'll probably also hit on a couple other topics that we've talked about before, including alligator Alcatraz and the current status there, and then also the redistricting wars and what's going on in California. Texas. Well, I guess Texas first, then California. But before we get into all those things, we have Noah Glick from the Ally here. Noah, how are we doing this week?
Hello. Doing good. Thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely. And then also this week, we have Arthur and Cheyenne joining us. So Arthur, Cheyenne, how are we doing? Anything going on in your neck of the woods this week?
Going great. Nothing new, Yeah.
No, absolutely nothing new.
I'm also tired. The brain's still waking up.
Yeah.
Insert fun banter here.
Yeah.
I'm trying to enjoy the last scraps of summer, taking a trip soon to go see Kodie and my sister, Brittany. And then school starts once again, and I'm back to being trapped. So that's what I'm doing.
Wonderful. Looking forward to that. I guess for non-politics related fun, I went to a flea market over the other weekend, and I purchased a crossbow. So I want to let you guys know that.
Oh my God.
I've never actually shot a crossbow before or anything. So I'm prepared for the zombie apocalypse now is what I'm saying. I didn't realize that crossbows kind of have a thing where you can't actually fire them unless you have a bolt in the crossbow, because like dry firing a crossbow could make it explode apparently. Yeah, so learning new things all the time. But yeah, now I've got that. So Brittany's thrilled about it.
I'll use it. I'll try it.
Perfect.
Kind of sounds like a flex a little bit, like in case anyone's listening, any of my enemies are listening, I've got a crossbow. I love it. That's good.
It's just prepping for if I ever have to like get into hunting or something like that in the post-apocalyptic world. I'm just trying to channel my inner Daryl, whatever his name is from The Walking Dead. I don't know. It's the guy with the crossbow.
Yeah,
Everyone
Daryl.
knows that.
Yeah. I don't think anybody knows his last name. It's just Daryl.
Daryl. Perfect.
Speaking of apocalypse, did you guys see in my neck of the woods out here in California, did you see that someone tested positive for the bubonic plague?
No. When did this take place?
Yeah.
This was a week or two ago. There was someone camping near Lake Tahoe, and I believe he got bit by an infected flea, I want to say. So the plague is back on the table, gents.
Yeah. Jeez. Infected flea.
But like they cured it?
I'd like to think I don't know the latest. Maybe I shouldn't have even brought it up because I don't want to alarm anyone. But I would like to think our medical system can handle the plague at this point. I'll fact check as we continue on here. Maybe we'll give an update on the plague later in this
Oh,
episode.
yeah. Yeah, I was curious. Like, I thought I'd seen something like that before, but it was a while back. But yeah, that we figured out how to stop it at this point. But anyway, yeah, we'll fact check as we go along. I'm sure, like, we're not going to get updates from the CDC or anything on that, right? They've just stopped doing updates, or is it just for measles-related cases? I don't know. We just don't get that anymore.
They stopped giving updates on that kind of stuff, but they started giving updates on like red food dye is good. I guess that's FDA, but they're just reversing everything.
Oh, man. Yeah, updates from subject matter experts aren't something we need anymore because we got rid of or wait, who did we fire recently? The people that that did the economic jobs report, right? We got rid of them because we didn't like the jobs report revisions, and now we're going to have economic numbers on hold until they can somehow fix the numbers, right? I think was what they said.
Yeah, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the leader of that is out, which is actually interesting to us at the Sierra Nevada Ally because since actually starting a couple months before Trump took office, we were tracking grocery prices for a handful of things using Bureau of Labor Statistics numbers. So now I'm curious to see if all of a sudden grocery prices will plummet.
Yeah.
We'll see. It's just like we've been tracking maybe 6 different things, and gas, the price of gas also, just to see how things are going in that time. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that kind of progresses.
Yeah, I was listening. I'd listened to that game that you play with your, is it the, sorry, I can't remember.
Managing director, yeah. My co-host, Scott. Yeah.
I didn't realize that that's where the numbers were coming from that. So yeah, and the person that took over is saying like, we need to completely gut this agency and rebuild it from the ground up. Just everything they're saying with every single other agency that they've dismantled. And so what I've been trying to think of is just like putting my brain into, their position, a career bureaucrat that has worked, in one of these organizations for 20 years, just like trying to do their job, well, and then this happens, right? And just the, I guess the language around, oh, this whole place needs to be gutted and it needs to be revamped and we can't trust the numbers. And then you hear from other people that have worked there for 30 years that are like, these are just like levels and levels of career bureaucrats that all they've done is worked on these numbers, right? It goes through so many checks before it even gets to it was the Pod Save America episode I was listening to recently, because the hosts on Pod Save America came from the Obama administration. They worked under Obama. And so they were really used to seeing these economic numbers, but they would only come to that's basically like the last stop. No one gets like a first look or anything at the numbers. Like when the president gets them or like they're announced, it's like, that's when these things come out. That's how like they're controlled they are. But they're talking about just like the process of coming up with that, the way that they said it. It was like, it was very hard to inject political bias into straight numbers pretty much. And that's what you had from this whole organization. That's all they did, right? Is worked on numbers. And now they're shutting down to do something with this. So I'm guessing like, what do those numbers look like when they come back? Do you have any credibility whatsoever? Like after they come back, any trust in those numbers being real? Like, I don't know. It seems very difficult from my perspective, but I don't know what you guys think about that.
Yeah, the numbers will be big, beautiful numbers when they come back.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I feel like this is going to be another lesson very quickly learned by the administration of how these agencies actually work, and they'll start bringing people back who know what they're doing. We've seen it over and over again with this administration to try to limit or reduce the size and scope of an agency. They'll fire a bunch of people and then realize, oh shoot, we actually need those people to do this work, so let's bring them back. So that's where I hold on to hope, is that they'll try to revamp things only to realize like, oh, this is actually how it is supposed to work, and it was working fine. So we'll see.
Yeah.
That's what I'm telling myself anyway.
I mean, like in the good news category, there has been a few things that have come out recently. I mean, like, well, I don't know if it's good news yet, but Elon Musk is seeing quite a few lawsuits for the work that he did with Doge and, and like dismantling organizations there. So, that's good. Like, hopefully they make their way through and, some truth comes out in discovery and through the process of that. But, who knows? But other good news, I think you guys might have seen this, but Kilmar Abrego Garcia is back and released, back with his family at this time. Though I think the government is still saying things like, oh, we're going to try and deport him to other places, whatever they're saying at this point.
Kodie, you mentioned before just imagining yourself in the role of someone who's worked at a federal agency for 20 years or so. Like, I think the same for Garcia, right? It's like, how do you, like, what would it be like being him or his family right now? It's just like, okay, yeah, you're here, but, you know, you're still being attacked by the president and the federal government. I can't imagine what that day-to-day kind of fear and anxiety has got to feel like, and how much he wants to be here at this point, you know? I don't know. There'd be a lot of things running through my head at this time.
Yeah, and also, like, we're talking about Kilmar Abrego Garcia, but, you know, he was one of the early, I guess, individuals that was wrongly deported. But that's happened to so many people since then, and how many names, like, we don't know, right, that are in similar situations. Yeah, it's got to be a really weird spot, like, involuntarily kind of being the face of some of this, right? Like, for him. Yeah, totally agree. Please stay tuned for a word from our sponsors.
Are you a proud and engaged citizen? Do you believe in a society built on trust and cooperation? Obey is proud to introduce a new way to get rewarded for your loyalty, the Freedom Points program.
Before the Freedom Points program, I'd earn points on things like takeout and gas. But now, I'm getting points just for being a good citizen.
That's right. The Freedom Points program is the next evolution in civic participation. Our proprietary system rewards positive social contributions. You get points for reporting unauthorized gatherings, for maintaining a positive social footprint, and for sharing state-approved news. It's loyalty quantified.
Imagine you get rewarded just for doing the right thing. Use your Freedom Points for exclusive access to secure public spaces, priority travel lanes, or even a faster response time from essential services.
I've already earned enough for priority access to the new secured public parks. It feels great knowing my contribution to a safer society is being recognized.
Don't just be a citizen, be a leader. Join the Freedom Points program today. Obey. Your loyalty rewarded.
All Freedom Points are subject to review by Obey algorithm and may be rescinded due to lack of social compliance. Speaking of no due process and wrongfully imprisoning people, let's move to the topic of the physical takeover of Washington, D.C. and what's been happening there. You know, we did talk about this the other week. When we had our last conversation about this, it really had just started. I think like the push was on like Friday night to start cleaning up some of the unhoused encampments based off of the executive order. And so since then, I mean, they've had, I don't know the number of states, but it's been quite a few of like the red states have volunteered to send their National Guard now into DC to help with this crime surge. And we've recently had some comments from Stephen Miller and Pete Hegseth and J.D. Vance. They decided to go to Union Station and do a meet and greet with the troops in a press conference. And so I'm going to play just like a small section of this for you guys. I'm specifically picking out Stephen Miller's portion of this to share. So basically before this, I won't play the whole thing. I'll include the link in our show notes if you want to view this. But prior to this, before Stephen Miller starts talking, I did want to note like J.D. Vance kind of like started this, and what he starts talking about is like, oh, look, we've seen like this crime surge is working. We're seeing like a reduce of crime by like 35%. Like I can take my kids into, or I couldn't take my kids into parks and things like that before, and now I can. So what we talked about last week, like why do you do this, you know, and parallel to history of how they basically used these roundups and criminal cleanups as propaganda for showing how this type of enforcement works. So I want to just play this part. This is Stephen Miller talking about essentially the protesters that have been protesting the efforts.
99% of this city has been terrorized by 1% of the city. And the voices that you hear out there, those crazy communists, they have no roots. They have no connections to the city. They have no families they're raising in this city. They have no one that they're sending to school in this city. They have no jobs in this city. They have no connections to this community at all. But they're the ones who've been advocating for the 1%, the criminals, the killers, the rapists, the drug dealers. And I'm glad they're here today. Because me, Pete, and the vice president are all going to leave here, and inspired by them, we're going to add thousands more resources to this city to get the criminals and the gang members out of here. We're going to dismantle those networks, and we're going to prove that a city can serve for the law-abiding citizens who live there. We are not going to let the communists destroy a great American city, let alone the nation's capital. And let's just also address one other thing. All these demonstrators that you've seen out here in recent days, all of these elderly white hippies, they're not part of the city and never have been. And by the way, most of the citizens who live in Washington, D.C. are black. This is not a city that has had any safety for its black citizens for generations. And President Trump is the one who is fixing that with the support of the Metropolitan Police Department, the support of the National Guard, and our federal law enforcement officers.
There's like 6 white people talking about all that there. That's interesting. I need a button. My sound button I want is like a barfing noise. Okay, that's what I would hit right now.
Yeah.
Stop trying to make the 1% rebrand happen.
Right? Yeah.
First, it's criminals, then it was jobless and familyless people, then they were communists, and then they ended up being elderly white hippies. I'm just like,
Yeah. Yeah. With no connection to DC, and there's so many things. Sorry. Anyone have first takes that they want to provide? Like, I could talk about this for a minute, but
Well, I just want to echo Arthur. I feel like anytime we mention Stephen Miller, it should just be an automatic barf sound. Because, I mean, that's essentially what it sounds. That's what it feels like anytime he talks.
yeah. And I think it's worth mentioning anytime we talk about Stephen Miller. Stephen Miller is a proud white nationalist, right? Like, this should be mentioned alongside his name every single time because he's one of the senior policy advisors to Trump, like literally standing next to the vice president and the secretary of defense, talking about how they're going to bring more troops into Washington, D.C. He's a white nationalist. He doesn't deny that. Same as Steve Bannon. That's who's running our government. We have a white nationalist government that needs to be acknowledged, and it's not something that people can just breeze over.
And I know this is unimportant, but did you notice he's wearing a tan suit?
I thought it was really ill-fitting too.
Yeah.
Like
It looked like a kid wearing his dad's suit.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
And it also looked like it was like a press conference in like a little restaurant or something. Like,
Yeah.
there were people that just, I don't know, it was weird. But I thought that DC was no longer like a black majority, and that like terms like chocolate city and things like that were like kind of outdated. So it's interesting that he says that most, or whatever the claim is about DC being black, and how the Trump admin is going to save it.
Well, I think another thing too, and this is just speculation. I have nothing to base this on other than speculation, but like what I'd seen online for a lot of this, at least early when the protests started in DC, was like, you know, white people need to be out there protesting. Like it needs to be a lot of white people out there protesting to show this is not a racial thing, right? Like it's a policy issue. And I'm wondering if that's why Stephen Miller is kind of like trying to discount any white protesters. Like they're just old hippies. Like they're not real white people or whatever you want to say there. But yeah, I wonder if that plays into it as a reason for kind of doing it. I mean, it's just, again, it's the word salad garbage of whatever you can throw at a wall that sounds scary, or they're communists, like blah, 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 blah. But yeah, I wonder if that plays into it at all.
I guess I thought when he was talking about like majority black, if that's like true, it seems like this DC takeover is like some sort of internal colonialism. And that's like a thing that Frantz Fanon writes about, who was like a French Marxist, maybe, if you could label him that, I don't know. But he says that these colonial tactics don't vanish. They actually come home and then they get applied. So this is kind of just like that exact thing where colonialism is turning inward and you have this external power that can override these local processes and representatives and just kind of take authority. And if they apply that to more cities, which tend to be more liberal and progressive, it's like obviously they're just trying to silence the democratic voice under the guise of safety and security, I guess.
Yeah.
It's interesting that he brought up race in his address, because I think it was and I'll have to fact check this, but I'm pretty sure it was the Baltimore mayor who called out the administration, saying that the cities that are being targeted are those with black mayors. And I just did a quick look on the Census Bureau for Washington, D.C. As of 2023, it looks like black Americans made up about 41%, just under 41% of DC, while as white is just under 39%. So it's still a majority black city, but not by much. Like it's very close. So 41 to 39%, basically. I think just to keep it in the propaganda lane, though, like one thing that's interesting is the blustery language, throwing out all these numbers and lots of bold claims without any sort of facts to back it up or anything. 99% of the, or whatever, not 1% of people are
Yeah.
doing crime of 90. I don't remember exactly the number, and it's none of these people have families here. None of them are contributing. None of them have jobs. It's like, you don't know that. Like, that's the kind of propaganda type language that comes off to get that emotional charge without any sort of real evidence.
Yeah.
So that's just something I think is worth noting as people are kind of navigating and wading through all this nonsense and all this narrative that's out there. Is just keep in mind, like, what's actually being sort of backed up by any sort of true evidence versus what's just kind of things you say.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really good point, just because, like, yeah, if you were watching this, like, what are the things that you need to look for? I mean, like we talked about before, like the othering, scapegoating, like all of that's on pretty full display here. But yeah, just, I guess, looking out for just claims that literally cannot be verified, and yet making them as like stating them as fact, right? Like, what would he have had to do? Like, they would have to, like, have a poll of every single protester out there, and, like, do you live in the city? Do you not? Like, all, like, just literally basic stuff that there's no way he actually knows the answer to, right? Yeah, and I know it's not like a statement, but just Pete Hegseth standing there, just that evil smile. I was like, oh God.
I thought when you froze it and you were about to play it and he was like almost laughing, and it was like pure evil.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, not a great person. I also think about what the National Guard troops are thinking, the ones that are standing there in the background as props. I'm sure some are in line with whatever's going on with the administration, but I know for, like, there's got to be a good portion of those troops that are just like, what on earth is going on here? Like, what are we doing here? That's a big thing that's been going on. It's just like the morale of the National Guard troops, because, like, they know when they're just in a bullshit situation, right? When you're like stationed on the National Mall as some kind of crime surge in, like, the place that's the most secure in DC, like what crime are you helping by, like, standing next to a Humvee in the National Mall of Washington, DC, other than just playing a political piece, right? I'm sure that weighs on a lot of people in the National Guard, but also the federal agents that are being forced to now, like, walk the streets in DC for this fake crime surge, like, that were working actual cases to actually protect American citizens, and now they've been pulled off that for a political stunt, right? Like, I think all of that, like, for those different troops, like, I could definitely put myself in their position, and, like, I would just be frustrated. I'm assuming, like, any of my friends that I were, or coworkers that I worked with before, would be super frustrated, be doing that. So yeah, I'm interested in the morale, I guess, is what I'm thinking for a lot of these people. And then there's ICE. Then there's the brown shirts. Like, I think that's a totally different story. Like, you see some of the videos coming out of DC with ICE, like, just tasing people, like, going after, like, delivery drivers and things like that in the city. Like, there's a big change between those two groups in my mind.
I'm more interested in, that, like, that point you brought up about the military and what military folks are feeling and thinking right now. Given your experience, Kodie, I'd be curious, or if you're still in touch with any of your military folks, like, what's the vibe of veterans and those in active duty right now? Like, what are people feeling in terms of serving some of these orders? Like, I am very curious about that. As, are there enough people in the military that would be willing to say no to these unlawful orders to essentially be a backstop that other institutions in the country have not been up to this point?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, like, thinking back to the people that served with, I would think if any of them were put into a situation where they were, like, I'm just going to the worst case scenario, like Pete Hegseth did say that they're going to be arming the National Guard troops that are now in Washington, D.C. That escalation to having armed military sitting in the city, like, I would think that anyone that I served with, I'm trying to remember, maybe there's a couple crazies in there, but if they were told to fire on civilians, would turn that down. But that's easy to say until you're put into a position where you would actually have to make that decision. It's very easy to say without being put there. But I can say for sure that if we were just in the walking around DC, we'd be like, what is this bullshit? This is just like the most ridiculous thing and being used as a political pawn instead of actually doing your job. Yeah, that there's nothing that kills morale faster than just, bullshit, basically.
Yeah. And like, I don't know, I guess it's the precursor to like a Tiananmen Square, like a Kent State or Tulsa massacre thing. Like, there are examples where states have murdered their citizens when you don't think it's going to happen. And this is all setting it up. It's pretty alarming.
Well, especially with the way that they've been downgrading qualification requirements. Like they've been loosening qualification requirements for ICE agents and now other areas as well. Like the FBI is starting to change their requirements to be able to get in, which is a huge problem, right? When you start eroding that and bringing in anyone that just wants to do the job. I can't remember if this was in our fascism episodes, but maybe it was when we were reading the book On Tyranny, when it was talking about when paramilitaries and the state become one. I think that was one of the pieces in that On Tyranny. And I almost feel like that's what you're seeing with ICE. Like if you drop the recruiting standards to that point where anyone can join in, like the paramilitary Proud Boys, like those organizations could be the people that are signing up for that. It makes a concern there. And it made me think about that quite a bit.
The other thing that I thought about is how DC is like more people than Vermont, but they don't get any representation in like Congress. Or like I know that like all of their city laws, and totally correct me if I'm wrong or if y'all know anything about this, but like that Congress dictates DC's budget and it has to be approved by Congress, and there's no like local DC. Like there's a committee, but they can overrule it. And then of course, like they can't resist federal troops because they don't have, like the mayor has no power to stop it. And so it's like they're getting taxed just like all of us, but they have no representation and they have no right to their local law. It's just like a ridiculous, it's like the heart of democracy. It's the capital.
Well, but that's like a really important point for all this too, because that's one of the reasons that Trump is able to do this in DC, right? Yeah. Like so easily be able to take over, federalize, bring in troops because of that. But yeah, I think some of these other cities that he's called out, Chicago and New York City, obviously have more legal ways to push back against this. But I mean, I guess like what is that at the point where you actually have to declare martial law, like everyone's saying he was going to do in order to take over? Like he didn't do that for LA, right? Like how he kind of like got the troops into LA to support ICE. Like he's just going to do the same thing there. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see kind of what happens, but that's a big important part of that for sure.
And yes, that is true, Arthur. Congress does need to, they review all DC legislation before it can become law. Congress can modify or overturn legislation, and it can impose new and unwanted laws on the district. And it also retains authority over the district's local budget, which is mostly funded by taxes that are paid by DC residents. So, yeah, you're right.
Yeah. I guess I don't know what's next in DC. Like they're using it now like as a propaganda tool. They're saying this works. Yeah. So we should do this in other areas, which we kind of expected to happen. I mean, that's what the Nazis did. So I guess I'm really interested to see what happens if he tries to do this in Chicago and New York, and like what legal means or legalese or legal warfare they're going to use in order to execute it, right? Because it'll probably be something similar. And also, will it be National Guard from red states are being sent into DC? So like what National Guard is going to go into Chicago, I guess is my question. Is he going to like try and federalize the Illinois National Guard for this? Like, is that what's going to happen? Or is he going to try and send like the West Virginia National Guard to Chicago? I just don't see a good outcome regardless of what occurs next.
It does seem like the escalation is strategic though. Like, yeah, given that DC doesn't really have statehood, so it doesn't have the same mechanisms that a state does to challenge these sort of moves. And so, yeah, it's a trial run in DC. And then, yeah, let's try Chicago and see how that goes. There are certain cities that I don't think Trump and the administration has any interest in trying out. Like Philadelphia comes to mind. I don't think Philadelphia would put up with any of this, especially, you know, it seems clear to me that he's targeting heavily black cities. But there are some black cities that will not put up with this kind of thing. Like, I think of like Oakland, where the Black Panthers are from. They're not putting up with this kind of thing. You look at Philadelphia, they're not going to put up with this kind of thing. So I think Chicago is the next logical step. And if Chicago goes well for the administration, who's to say that Memphis isn't next, and Baltimore and some of these other black cities? Because that does seem to be what the administration is targeting.
Yeah, every time this works, or every time, you know, troops are in cities, like, it's just that escalation of force that they're almost following, right? It's like, oh, we put troops here, then we pulled them out of LA, and then we activated the Marines, and then we pulled them out. Okay, now we're activating National Guard from all these different states to come in. Okay, now we're going to arm the National Guard. Oh, look, like, crime's cleaned up. Let's go to Chicago. And then, like, the more and more this happens, more it gets normalized, and people get used to people in military uniforms running around in the streets with weapons, grabbing people out of cars. I mean, that's literally happening right now. So, like, it's just a normalization of state violence.
Like, what a recipe of, like, it's like militarization, and then it's like Trump wants to take away mail-in voting, voter suppression, and then it's like control of information with the Smithsonian and with, like, firing the bureau stats, like any sort of real concrete numbers. It's like core playbook of, like, some regime that, you know, you read about in a history book, and it's like obviously a slow creep, and here it is.
And, like, we say it's a slow creep because it's been, what, 7 months, 8 months?
7 months, yeah.
Hey kids, are you ready for an adventure through time?
Then grab your family and get ready to play History Hopscotch, the brand new board game from Veritas Press that makes learning about our amazing nation fun for everyone.
Finally, a game I can trust to teach my kids the real story of America. History Hopscotch takes you on a journey through pivotal moments in our history, from the brave pioneers to our modern-day heroes.
You get to collect courage coins for every victory and founders' flags for showing true patriotism.
But watch out for the misinformation mayhem cards. They try to trick you with silly stories that aren't really true. You have to use your knowledge of real American history to overcome them.
History Hopscotch teaches important values like bravery, freedom, and the importance of knowing where you come from. It's the perfect way to spend quality family time while teaching a strong foundation of true American heritage.
Ask your parents for History Hopscotch today.
History Hopscotch, the right history, right now.
Arthur, you talked about the Smithsonian. Noah, you talked about how they're like targeting black cities. And then, you know, we talked about the Smithsonian the other week, in that the Trump administration basically came out and said, like, that they wanted to review and make sure that it was aligned with Americanism. But now the specific museums that they want to review have come out. So I'm just going to read these off. This is from the Washington Post. The title for this is called "The White House Calls Out 7 Smithsonian Museums for Their Exhibits and Messaging." This is Janie Kingsbury, Sophie Wynn, and Maro Judakis, I think. So we'll include the link to this in our show notes. I'm just going to read kind of like the first 2 paragraphs of this article. The White House increased its pressure on the Smithsonian on Thursday, calling out a list of exhibitions and materials mentioning race, slavery, transgender identity, and immigration to bolster President Trump's ongoing criticism of the institution is too focused on divisive and negative aspects of American history. In an official unsigned article titled "President Trump is Right About the Smithsonian," the White House called out several museums for their exhibits and messaging, including the National Museum of African American History and Culture, the National Museum of American History, the National Portrait Gallery, and the National Museum of the American Latino. As President Trump promised, the Trump administration is committed to rooting out woke and divisive ideology in our government institutions. The White House spokesperson David Ingalls said in an email, "Taxpayer money should not be used for anything that pits Americans against one another. Our Smithsonian should exhibit history in an accurate, honest, and factual way." Among the targets of the White House's list were 2 museums that have not even broken ground yet on their buildings, the National Museum of American Latino and the American Women's History Museum, and works by individual artists. So I won't read the rest of this because it's a bit of a longer article. We will include it, but I will mention there's kind of like the next section in here is from a few of the artists that had their exhibits targeted specifically. They mention in there, the same way we did last week, that it felt very similar to the degenerate art exhibitions that the Germans held in like 1930s, and basically highlighting like what didn't align to the Reichs at the time. So they're making that comparison, so we didn't have to. But yeah, any weird that we're targeting black cities, and then we're also targeting education around slavery and African American history and any immigrant history, transgender history. Like those are the scapegoated targets for the administration that we want to go after for the Smithsonian. So any thoughts on that selection of museums that they're going after? Any reason why? Like I can't imagine, but
Yeah, I saw a lot of videos this week how in this, like they're trying to focus more on like, quote, progress than mistakes or something like that. And I think that what I saw was how they were talking about slavery and how, they wanted to be like, oh, we've just come so far. Let's just talk about like how much we, instead of like focusing on enslaving human beings.
Right.
And so I think that all of these are just like, obviously racially tied, and it's like obviously cultural authoritarianism and an attempt to like monopolize the viewpoint and the memory and like the public memory of all of these things. And whoever controls that, like obviously can rewrite the archive itself, and a regime can change all of history and teach it in Texas. And it's like just total control over information. So it's really scary. You got militarization, you got like physical control and domination, and then you have the ideological control and domination.
Yep.
And then you just suppress the voters.
Right.
Let's keep it going.
It's been almost an hour. I feel like we have to talk about 1984, right? Because this is exactly the famous quote from that book. It's who controls the past controls the future. Who controls the present controls the past. And like that's exactly what's happening. I mean, 1984 wasn't supposed to be an instruction manual, it was meant to be more of a warning, I believe. So the fact that we're seeing that is interesting. I have a couple of thoughts on that article or what you just shared, Kodie. I think it's interesting that you see this push from a propaganda lens to say we care about the facts and we want things that are to reflect the truth of what's going on. We don't want to talk about uncomfortable things like slavery. It's like, well, that's a truth. That's a fact that actually had happened. And also they say that they want truth and facts while also saying they want to get rid of woke things. Does anyone know what woke means yet? Have we gotten a definition on what woke is other than just something new? Like, I just, like, even, and not to get on a tangent, but even Cracker Barrel now is woke because they got a new logo because they had the audacity to update their logo. So now they're woke. So to me, it's just, we want to be truthful and factual, but we don't want to talk about things that make us uncomfortable.
Yeah.
That's what I took from that.
That's a really good definition of woke.
Yeah. Yeah, I think of like woke as just being like socially and politically like aware. And they're talking about like, I think one of the quotes that you said, Kodie, too, at this is like, they don't want to use tax dollars on things that are divisive to Americans or whatever. It's like, that's literally what all of your money is going towards. You're putting armed troops in a city that has no problems.
Yeah. To protect its citizens while going around and harassing its citizens. Like 1984 again, what was it? The party told you not to believe your eyes and ears, right? That's literally what they do with everything that they say nowadays. So it's like, you can't believe, just trust the party line, not like what is actually occurring in front of your face, right? Yeah. That line, no, I agree that, actually I think both of you mentioned it, but it was, I'm going to read it out one more time. Our Smithsonian should exhibit history in an accurate, honest, and factual way. And right before that, taxpayer money should not be used to exhibit things that pit Americans against one another.
Meanwhile, let's like throw up some statues in the South of like,
let's put up all the Confederate
white generals. Yeah, like what?
We need the barf sound again.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Or I saw like, it's a little of an aside, But just yesterday I saw that like DeSantis erased that rainbow crossing, you know, in like the middle of the night. It's like, that's using tax dollars to whatever. It's so stupid.
Yep. Yeah. Same thing. Yeah. Just trying to erase that for this image of order, right? Like, got to try and show order and cleanliness and all this other stuff in order to try and sell like whatever their vision is for America.
I do think it's worth, though, just reinforcing this idea. I mean, we're a propaganda podcast, so I think it's worth reinforcing the idea of when we see propaganda to call it out for what it is, right? Like what you're talking about with the Smithsonian push of, we want to highlight things that are accurate and factual, but you know, we don't want to use taxpayer dollars on things that are dividing the country, while the facts are right there in front of you, showing that taxpayer dollars are being used on things that are deeply unpopular and are dividing the country, like quite literally dividing families and dividing the country. So it's important to remember that as a listener, as someone, as a citizen, as someone who lives in this world, like that is straight up propaganda. We're doing one thing, but we're saying something completely different, but we want you to just believe what we're saying.
Yeah, definitely. To that point, truth is manufactured, and it's through memory and narrative and meaning, and they're revisiting all of these very important historical points and punishing the past viewpoint of them and totally reshaping it. So it's definitely recreating truth and about the power of who controls that. That's super scary.
Yeah, and I think the other part of it too is, and this is what stuck out to me from the book that we were reading when affirmative action was white, when we read through that, is like, if you remove the history of slavery or you just focus on progress, then you whitewash it in a way that doesn't pull out like the systemic issues with that progress, like we talked about for like how the New Deal was, you know, a lot of the ways that that was set up, a lot of the compromises that were made, how that negatively impacted Black Americans, right? And they were written out of a lot of things, right? And so it's two things, right? It's like trying to make America look better, but also if you don't understand what those compromises were, how they were made, and how they disadvantage people, essentially it's like, this is how the government can oppress people through legal means, right? And if you don't learn about how they did that to some groups, then they can do that to you, and they can do that, right?
Yeah, it's almost like a PR marketing playbook. When you only focus on upward progress, you don't just simplify, but you sterilize the past. And it obviously is comforting to like the powerful regime. And it's obviously like disorienting the oppressed people of history. So it's just like a marketing scheme for these elite people that have been running the world forever and continue to do so and shouldn't exist and should be taxed at a really high rate.
Very high. Yeah. So I guess we'll see what happens with this. I'm going down to DC in November. I'd be interested to see what DC is going to look like then. Yeah, I'll probably go to the Smithsonian, see what they look like at the time.
If anyone's listening, I think it'd be worth, if anyone's listening and takes a trip to the Smithsonian, whatever photos you're able to grab, or take some notes of the exhibits that are there now before things change too much. Because then, Kodie, when you go there in November, it'd be interesting to see how things change. So if any listeners are out there and are in DC or planning to go to DC and are at the Smithsonian, you know, take some notes.
Yeah.
See what's there now. We'd love to see how things change over time.
Yeah.
Maybe that's the journalist in me. I just want to see how things change over time.
No, I think that's great. And Maryland, Virginia is our third and fourth most listened states. So maybe we'll have some people that could take some trips and do some citizen documentation. That'd be great. That's going to do it for part one this week. We'll be dropping part two on Thursday, where we'll close out this conversation. We'll be hitting a little bit on Trump's health, the Epstein files, and what's going on with Ghislaine Maxwell being moved to minimum security prison, as well as a little update on the redistricting wars and Alligator Alcatraz. So tune in Thursday to catch part two for this. And as always, if you like the conversations that we're having, please share with your friends and family, subscribe and auto download our episodes, and leave us a review. All these things help us get seen more by the algorithm and get this show out to more people. Thank you for listening and your support. Stay safe, stay aware, and remember that propaganda loves you.